Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and today I'm coming to you with the books that I read in the latter half of June. So some of these I really don't have very many thoughts on them at all. I'm going to kind of just go through them really quickly, which is probably a good thing because some of the books on this list I'm going to talk about quite extensively. So firstly, I'm going to start with the ones that I really don't have very much to say about. So we have The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. This is about a girl who just has no memories. I thought that, the world building was good, but it was kind of predictable and kind of weak beyond the world building aspect. Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. This was really good world building wise also, but in the character development portion and all of that, it was not super duper great. There were also some not necessarily animal cruelty instances, but definitely some like killing and eating of animals and stuff like that just kind of made me upset, and I just don't like that stuff. And there is the romance is a pretty significant portion of this book, and it just wasn't really anything. The Stardust Thief. This is also a book that was good in world building, but I don't know if I just don't really prefer multiple POV characters who are all kind of similar and have similar roles to play in the story when there are more than two of them. And I don't know, this book just really lost me at several points, but it ultimately was not bad, truly. Then I have Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. This was my Works Book Club pick. So obviously the title does explain exactly what the book is about, and it was really good. It was mostly information that I pretty much knew, but it presented it with kind of specific stories, specific things that have been shown to occur, that type of thing. And basically the moral of the book is that being in charge, being a leader is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. And I liked how this book had some specific, specific instances where that kind of comes into play. Like one chapter talks about a workplace that has some things behind a locked door, so that any employees that need that stuff have to talk to somebody and get it opened and be able to get that. And then when the company took that away, it decided to just let the employees go and get, check out whatever they needed, without having to have somebody, have them get somebody. That actually made productivity go up because the people working there all felt like this workplace trusts me. Now I'm going to take forever to talk about Falling in a Sea of Stars by Kristen Britton. This is book 8 in the Green Rider series, and it comes out on September 30th. I was approved for the ARC through NetGalley. Thank you so much to NetGalley and Daw Books. I am so happy I got to read this because it's my favorite series ever, and this was so good. So basically, this whole series, just even though it's a somewhat typical fantasy setting, like it's not really anything that different setting wise or anything, but this book just has a really good way, this whole series has a really good way of having really good character dynamics all across the board, really never doing anything too tropey or convenient. It just really keeps you reading. And I think one thing I liked about this one in particular is that it gives us a lot more kind of political intrigue and a lot more just stuff going on besides the main plot, which we had been kind of missing since book 4. So starting at book 4, we hadn't really had any kind of break in the stuff happening. Like each book, kind of books 5, 6, and 7 all took place immediately following the events of the previous installment. So it was kind of like, oh no, this is still happening, blah blah blah, whereas this one is the first one in quite a while where it takes place several months later, and things are going on just overall between all the characters, all that stuff, and it just did a really good job with that. And it just really upped the like nail-biting political intrigue in addition to still having some serious stakes as far as the main plot goes, and it was just really, really good. The only thing, however, and I criticize this book only because this series is, I hold this whole series to such a high standard, because it is truly that good and that intelligent and that inventive, that I'm upset that this one did do some stuff that was a little bit tropey and, that I really, really did not like. So that being, basically, part of this book, and by part I literally only mean like 3% of the book, takes place in kind of an Asian inspired country that is very like, it treats women like absolute crap, like it robs women of any kind of personhood. And obviously that is something very relevant in today's world. It obviously makes absolute sense. And this plot line did kind of start in the previous book. We do already kind of see that. But I just didn't really understand why it had to be an Asian world that did that. And then there was a part at the end of that section kind of where a bunch of women who were not originally from there, they are like women who were kidnapped and like sold into slavery, etc., etc., so they were already not really supposed to be there. They are freed, and they're leaving, and there's a part where they take off their veils and like throw them over the edge of the ship. And even though obviously it does help that they are not women who are actually from there, it really made me feel like that's a little bit Islamophobic. Like if I were Muslim reading that, I would be like, really? Like, why? Because it felt super weird, and there is some internal monologue that kind of goes, oh, the women have to wear veils because basically that makes them seem less human and it justifies more hate towards them, blah, 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 which, again, I completely understand that that is absolutely something relevant in today's world that we live in, just all across the board. But, and maybe it is also true that some people like the Taliban really do that for that reason, but it just felt very like they're taking off their veils, like, oh, Muslim women are oppressed and all of that. And I think that obviously, a fantasy version of something is not divorced from its obvious real world inspiration. And I felt like with how inventive this series is and how well this series typically avoids doing anything really tropey and just kind of convenient, I felt like, why did it really have to be veils in that instance if you're really like trying to portray a country that hates women? Why couldn't it have been like a mask or like a beekeeper's hat or like something else? Like it didn't really make sense for it to be a veil if women are going to be like taking it off and throwing it away, like that type of thing. Like, I don't know. So the one other thing that I could possibly ignore that this book did wrong, this particular book, was that there were several chapters in a row, like several of them, all in the first half of the book, which makes me think that this could have just been an arc thing. Maybe this is corrected in the final version, I don't know. But several chapters in a row would start by replaying the exact same last couple of paragraphs of the previous chapter from a different character's point of view. And there wasn't really any reason for that. Like, I definitely do understand as an author wanting to keep, if you write something a couple of different ways, it's a gigantic bummer to take out one of those. If that makes sense, I definitely do understand the need to keep, like, two versions of something or, like, two points of view. But really, that could have been done away with. You don't need another character's point of view of the exact same events where it doesn't add anything new. It actually is the exact same thing, just being replayed again. Like, I don't know, it just didn't really make sense for me for the book to do that. But overall, I loved this book. those two things were the only things that kept me from giving it 5 stars. But I still really adored this book. I was like laughing and just biting my nails the entire book. I thought that the character dynamics were really, really on point, especially now that we kind of get a little bit of a break in this book from the intensity that was the last few books. But just because, again, I hold this series to a very, very high standard, I am just a little bit annoyed that those things were a thing in this one. So anyway, if you haven't read the Green Rider series, please get on that because it is so good and I love it. And I really want to like reread the series again in the next couple years. I think I might do like a read along for that. I have no idea. So anyway, back to the rest of the books. Six Wild Crowns by Holly Race. This is a book that just came out this month. It is about a fantasy version of King Henry VIII and his 6 wives, but he's married to all of them at the same time. It is really good. I really liked the world building. I liked the whole idea of it, obviously. But there were a few things that were a little bit weak in this book. Like, I think that there were a lot of fantasy things going on that we don't see enough of, so they came across as just kind of like, I don't know, random, and we didn't really get as much of them. And I did think that the 6 wives, we really only two of them are main characters. We really don't see the others very much, and we barely see one of them at all, kind of. And so I kind of wanted more out of the story, but I will go into that in my full review of this book. The Rainfall Market, this is about a girl who is living in poverty in Korea somewhere. This is a Korean book translated into English, and she goes to this market that wants to buy her misfortune from her. And this book took a while to get going. This is a 200-page book. The first 3/4 were really just kind of like, I was like, okay, can we maybe get the story going a little bit? And I wasn't really a huge fan of the storytelling of it because things are just never really described. Like, characters just aren't really described very much. And like, I don't know if we even are actually told that the cat is white. Like, all of that, like, there's a lot of stuff that just was not actually described or actually explained, that type of thing. But the last 50 pages of this book were an absolute sob fest. And I don't think I'd had that big of a reaction to a book ever in my life. So basically I got to a really sad part right before starting work in the morning, and I was still thinking about it all through my workday and just sobbing and sobbing, and I had to take my break like an hour into my workday to like read as much of it as I could, as much of what I had left as I could, to at least get to a point where that sad thing was resolved in some way. And even as I was reading the rest of it, I was just crying, and then I read the last like couple chapters later and I was still like crying about it, and then it was just absolutely insane. And I was like, wow, this is the first time in a long time that I had like a book hangover. And for it to not even really have started out that great, and for like most of the book to have just been okay, for that, you know, for the last like 1/4 of the book to be like that was just absolutely insane. So obviously, the only thing that I could read after that was another sob fest of a cat book. So I read The Ghost Cat. This is about a cat who dies of just like old age, basically, and he didn't use up his 9 lives because he was just he was just like a house cat. So in lieu of him having used any lives, he gets to actually be a ghost 8 different times in different time periods. So when he dies, it's 1902, and he ends up in 2022 at the end before he finally actually passes on. So this book was so weird, and it's really hard to describe. First of all, I was kind of hoping for some kind of tie-in between the the times that he travels to, because we don't really follow, even though he's in the same house every single time, we really don't follow anything, you know, any of the same people hardly. Um, Aside from the person whose he actually was. Um, we really only get a few recurring characters and who like show up later when they're old or anything like that, and they're like minor, super minor characters basically. Like we really mostly see completely different people in each of the chapters. Some of the chapters were really just kind of okay and nothing really happened in them, and then other chapters were really good and really, like, one of them actually made me cry. And like a couple of the other ones were still like really sweet and really adorable, that type of thing. So ultimately, I felt like this was a pretty well researched book, but I thought that it could have had a little bit more of a point, that actually tied the whole thing together. And I kind of even more so wish that we were in some way following the same, like, maybe the same, you know, generations of the same family or like something. I don't know. So it felt very like arbitrary some of the times, whereas other times, you know, you can see what he was supposed to do in that chapter. So it was a little bit disjointed that way. So like some aspects of this book were just so good, and others were just kind of like, why was this really in there? Anyway, so that was my feelings on this book. So anyway, thank you so much for sitting through my very long explanations for some of these books. I Let me know if you've read any of these, and I hope that I see you very soon with a new video. Bye!